Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, let's start off by paying homage to the Buddha, taking refuge and the 5 precepts. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato. Having observed your precepts, don't forget to fulfill them. Appamadena sampadeta. Let us meditate. In whatever posture you are at, just relax. You can keep your eyes closed or open or half closed or half open, it's okay. But just relax. Body relaxed, mind relaxed. Come back to the present. Come back to your senses. Be aware that you are right here in this hall, not allowing your mind to go back to the past or worry about the future. You are here right now because you can hear sounds around you. You can feel your body seated. There is a body aliveness in you. In whatever position that you are now in, if your eyes are open, you could just be aware that you are seeing without focusing on anything in particular. Just an unfocused gaze. The wonder of being present. Not living up in your head, but being with your senses. With relaxed awareness, ensuring that your body is relaxed itself is also a meditation, because we tend to tense up. So by default, every now and then return to check if your body is relaxed. Eyes, nose, cheeks, jaws, neck muscles, particularly your shoulders, your arms, your hands. Relax your chest muscles, your stomach muscles. But try to keep your back straight, lower back firm, shoulders relaxed. Lower parts of the body, your legs, your thighs also relaxed. If you find that they are tense and you can't relax them, it's okay. Let it be. Just move on to another sensation. You don't have to force yourself to focus on any particular object. Just allow the mind to move of itself from one sense to another. As long as you don't get caught up in thoughts about the past or the future, or even thoughts about present objects that you are perceiving through your senses. Continue to be aware of your senses, anchoring yourself in your body, coming back to check if you are relaxed or tense every now and then, even when you are listening to my talk. I first thought of the idea of this theme or slogan, "Now everyone can meditate." This is about a year ago. I was sitting in the airport, waiting for my flight from Kuching to Miri. And at each airport, I would be sitting there, waiting for the departure. And out there, I could see Airbuses belonging to AirAsia. And on every Airbus, you could see, now everyone can fly. So that gave me an idea. What do you think is AirAsia's success? Yeah, because it cuts down a lot of extras, all the frills, and gives you just the bare minimum. Of course, if you can afford a business class, you can travel Silk Air or Qantas or any other airlines. Or if you're not that wealthy, you could also travel economy class in those airlines. But still, the price is higher than AirAsia. I see a similarity in Buddhist meditation. The business class of Buddhist meditation is developing all the jhanas, getting all the psychic powers, recollecting your past lives, getting the divine eye, divine ear, looking into the past lives of other beings before you can actually understand the Four Noble Truths, penetrate the Four Noble Truths and be awakened. That's business class. How many of you can afford that? Not even monks and nuns. Many monks and nuns will not be able to afford that sort of business class. The economy class would be going on intensive retreat, maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months or more. Slowing down and try to be aware of whatever is happening to you at the sense doors, labeling everything that you perceive, whatever is happening to your mind. Seeing, hearing, thinking, planning, rising, falling, lifting, pushing, placing, intending to walk, intending to stop, intending to open the door, opening the door, and so forth. That's flying economy class. How many of you can afford to do that? And even if you can do that once a year, maybe you can get off for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. After you finish your intensive retreat and you come back to the world, you have a very good excuse. how can I meditate when I'm back in the world? How can I go around moving so slowly and labeling every little experience that I have? How am I going to operate and survive in this world? So you have a very good excuse for not meditating, because you can't do that. It's beyond your reach. So I'm following the footsteps of AirAsia. I'm cutting on all those frills, all those extras, and I'm going to give you the bare minimum. I'm not saying that you don't have to go for retreats at all. If you can go for retreats, very good. If you can afford business class like William, go ahead. But you can also meditate in your daily life. It's not that difficult. You just did it just now. All you need to do is come back to the present moment, being aware of what's happening. Now let's look at the word meditation. Meditation is an English translation for two Pali words. One word is called jhana, and the other word is called bhavana. Many people have this idea that when you talk about meditation, you're referring to just sitting straight, cross-legged, if possible, full lotus position, back straight, eyes closed, and focusing on a single object. And you're supposed to get peace and tranquility. You're supposed to see lights and visions and maybe, different deities. That's a common perception. Or people feel that when you meditate, then you can get psychic powers. You can read people's minds. You can know the 4-digit number that's going to come up. Different people meditate for different reasons. Perhaps you could say that in our Pali texts, the earliest reference to meditation in that sense is the word jhana. And that was, according to our texts, that was what the Buddha did in order to get awakened. That's a very high level of meditation. But in other parts of the sutta, the Buddha also referred to 3 types of merits, 3 bases of meritorious actions. The first one is dana, generosity, giving. The second one is sila, morality, keeping your precepts. And the third one is called bhavana, which is development, cultivation. Bhavana is a noun that comes from the verb bhaveti. Bhaveti means to cause to happen, to activate. Or you could say to develop. Jhana is a noun. It derived from the verb jayati, which means to think, to apply your mind. Okay, you apply your mind to a particular subject for a long time, and that is supposed to give you some sort of mental steadiness, undistractedness, and people say concentration. Bhavana means bhaveti, to cause to happen, to activate. What do you cause to happen? What do you activate? What is the whole purpose of bhavana? Developing what? Not a housing developer, but you're trying to develop wholesome mental states. Then you need to ask yourself, what are wholesome mental states? To recognize wholesome mental states, what do you need to do? You need to look at your mind, right? You need to look back at what's happening to your mind in order to be able to distinguish, this is a wholesome mental state, this is an unwholesome mental state. But in the first place, you need to have some theory. What constitutes wholesome mental states and what constitutes unwholesome mental states? Very, very fundamentally, wholesome mental states are those mental states that are associated or motivated by non-attachment, by non-aversion, non-delusion. Or to put it in a positive way, by letting go, by loving kindness, consideration, by wisdom and discretion. Unwholesome mental states are those states that are motivated by desire, attachment, clinging, craving. That's one set. And the other is the set of unpleasant mental states: anger, disappointment, resentment, impatience. And all these is very easy to identify the second type of unwholesome mental states because it is always accompanied by displeasure, unpleasantness. And the third sort of unwholesome mental state is called moha. Moha is delusion. Delusion could be from the worldly point of view, and it could be from the spiritual point of view. It could be from the conventional point of view or from the ultimate point of view. On the conventional level, this means being able to see things according to conventional reality, according to what is, rather than your interpretation of what is happening. I'll give you a concrete example. Supposing you were to go to a restaurant, and then a waiter comes to serve you soup. All right? And then the soup happened to be cold. So it's a fact that the soup is cold. That's the reality. But you are very angry that you are served cold soup, because you expect soups to be served hot and steaming. And so you call up the waiter or you go up to the manager and you complain and say, "How dare you serve me cold soup?" Okay, that is an interpretation. Well, the fact is that cold soup was served to you, and what you can say actually is to tell nicely to the waiter, "The soup is cold. Could you give me another bowl of hot soup?" You could say it very nicely, right? That is presenting facts, without getting your emotions involved. There could be many reasons why the soup is cold. Maybe the waiter didn't know about it. It's just that she was told to serve this. It's not her fault. It could be the fault of the cook. Or something else could have happened along the line. Okay, that's from the conventional point of view. From the ultimate point of view, delusion means not understanding the true nature of reality. The ultimate true nature of reality. The ultimate true nature of reality, according to the Buddha and according to modern quantum physicists, is that nothing is permanent. Everything is arising and passing away from moment to moment at such a fantastic speed that the naked eye cannot even perceive it. In fact, latest discoveries tell us that the so-called atom, thought to be the smallest particle of matter in the early 19th century, is actually 99.9% emptiness, space. But you look at all of us, if we look at each other, we seem to be as solid and as real as can be. Right? Not? That's according to what we can perceive through our senses. But in the ultimate sense, there is no one there, nothing there. It's just all these atoms and molecules, all these subatomic particles, which are actually packets of energy that are fluctuating so fast that it gives you the illusion of something permanent and solid and tangible. But it's not easy to perceive that through our senses. In fact, the Buddha said in a particular sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, he says, it's understandable if a person were to consider his or her body permanent or very slow in changing. Not because you seem to be the same person yesterday and today. You don't seem to have grown very much. If you look at the mirror, you seem to be the same, right? Not? Although scientists will tell you that millions of cells are dying and new ones are being produced every moment. But you don't see that. So the Buddha says it's understandable if a person were to think that his or her body is unchanging. But who can deny that our minds are changing all the time? In the little exercise that we had before I started my talk, can you count how many times your mind wandered off into the past and into the future while you were trying to stay in the present? I think with all the fingers and toes, you wouldn't be able to count the number of times your mind ran off, wandered off to the past and to the future. Now, it's not impossible for yogis to be able to perceive this impermanent nature of matter. In 1984, after a 3-month intensive mindfulness retreat, some scientists of Harvard University conducted a test. They conducted actually a series of tests on certain subjects before and after the retreat. One of the tests that they conducted is called a T-scope test. Now, a T-scope is a special instrument. It's like a radar screen in which you can adjust the rate of sparking. So you can actually spark it every second, or every half second, every millisecond, and so forth. So each of us has our own threshold level. When we look at 2 sparks sparking at a certain rate, there comes a time when we cannot differentiate the 2 sparks. 2 sparks appear to be just one. That's very much like the fluorescent lamp that is lit. We think that the light is on all the time, but the fluorescent lamp actually works on alternating current, and is actually fluctuating about 60 times per second. And we think that it's on all the time, but actually it's on and off, but we can't perceive it with our bare eye. They will take the reading of each yogi before the retreat. And after the 3-month retreat, they will conduct the test again. Right? So this time, they will increase the rate of sparking. And they found out, to their surprise, that some of the more advanced yogis increased their threshold level by 600%. Which means to say, what they saw as one spark before the retreat, at the end of the 3-month intensive mindfulness retreat, they could now see the beginning, the middle, and the ending of the first spark, followed by a gap, and then the beginning, the middle, and the ending of the next spark. Right? Now, this is a fantastic breakthrough in science, because a lot of scientists at that time, in the early 80s, did not take meditation very seriously. And they say there's only something very subjective. How do you know that what you experience is real? Because there's no way that you can quantify it. So this way of measuring sensitivity of attention can be quantified. So now they cannot say that it's totally subjective. Now it's very objective. They can see all these things and they can be measured. So, but then, in order to be able to perceive matter arising and passing away, you need to have a high degree of concentration. You have to fly at least economy class, if not business class. But, if you want to fly AirAsia, you can watch your mind. And your mind is arising and passing away. Your thoughts are coming and going every moment. And it's not that difficult to watch your thoughts come and go. Is it? It's not that difficult. Okay, coming back to the meaning of bhavana, cultivation, development. Again, to recap, we are trying to develop wholesome states of mind. So you must be able to distinguish what are wholesome states, what are unwholesome states, and then you abandon unwholesome states, and you arouse, activate, and maintain and develop wholesome states of mind. So wholesome states of mind can be applied in the worldly sense. You want to do charity, you are kind-hearted, you are open-minded, you are very considerate, These are all very worldly sort of wholesome deeds, which should also be developed. On the other hand, we also have more supramundane, otherworldly, wholesome states, which are related to ultimate reality. When you are able to practice mindfulness, like what we did when we first started, in the sense of trying to come back to the present moment throughout the whole day, not necessarily only when you are seated stationary, but even when you're moving around. Because the point is, this work of meditation is the work of the mind. It's not the work of the body. It doesn't matter in what posture, in what position your body is in. What is more important is your quality of mind. What is your quality of mind at any given point of time? But we all know that we are creatures of habit. We all know that we are slaves of our past conditioning. And it's so very difficult to get out of our conditioning. And this is very much in line with the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha always talked about cause and condition. He always talks about the law of dependent arising. The Mahayana Buddhists usually like to refer to sunyata, emptiness. Now, that sort of emptiness is not the sort of emptiness that I talked about earlier, of the quantum physicist emptiness. Their form of emptiness is that nothing has an independent self-existence. Everything is no thing because they don't have any independent self-existence. Whatever arises is a product of multiple causes and conditions, and they are all interdependent, very closely interrelated. Very, very complex. And modern scientists are also verifying this now. So, how do we go about watching our minds throughout the whole day? Well, first of all, we need to learn up some theories. We could say that we can accept them as a hypothesis, and we try to verify it in our daily lives. Okay, number one, we need to understand the nature of the five senses and the nature of the mind. The nature of the five senses is that each of the five senses can only be aware of or perceive a specific object. The eyes can only see colors. The eyes cannot hear sound, nor taste tastes, or smell, or feel bodily sensations. The ear can only hear sounds, but it cannot see or taste or smell. Right? Each of the senses have their specific objects. That's number one. They're very specific, object specific. The second principle we need to understand is that all these objects of the five senses must be in the present moment. You can only see, hear, smell, taste, and feel sensations and other objects which are right in front of you right now. What you saw this morning, if it's not right in front of you, you won't be able to see it with your eyes. Yeah, what you ate before you came, if you cannot taste it now, if it's not here in front of you. That's very simple. So when people say, be present, what do they mean? Come back to your senses. If you come back to your senses and you're aware of what's happening at your five sense doors, you are being in the present. Now, the nature of the mind is a bit different. When you're asleep at night and you're having a nice dream, all your five senses are shut down. You may not even feel that you are sleeping on a bed. Yeah? But in your dream, you may be flying in the air, you may be dancing in the disco, you may be quarreling with your spouse, you may be running away because, robbers and assailants are after you. Yeah? And you can feel all that, all the effects inside there, and you think that is as real as it can be. Yeah, but all your five senses are actually shut down. But who is doing all this work? Huh? It's the mind. The mind is the culprit. So the mind has got this fantastic ability to be able to think of past events, make future projections, and get involved in fantasies and imaginations. But it can also stay in the present. Now, the word present is a very relative term. And because if I mention the word present, by the time I finish saying the word present, it's already past, isn't it? So how present is present? You talk about this present life, which means the moment you are born until now, this is present life. He said, this present time, it could be this age, what is that, the 20th century? Yeah. And you talk about the past, what is the past? Well, the past could be a distant past, many lifetimes ago. It could be your childhood, it could be a past. Yeah. It could be a few years back, it could be last week, it could be this morning, it could be an hour ago, 10 minutes ago, 5 seconds ago, a millisecond ago, just a moment ago. Right? So as you get nearer to the present, then you cannot draw the line, which is the present and which is the past. Right? Now, why am I trying to draw this distinction? That's because we use the word mindfulness often. Be mindful, be mindful. If you look at the old English dictionaries, mindful means be careful. Yeah? Be mindful. That means be careful. But the way Buddhists use the word mindfulness or be mindful has got a different connotation. It's not just being careful, although being careful is one of its applications. It means being aware of what has just happened. Why do I say that? Because what you see, hear, smell, taste, are arrested or perceived at your senses. But it is your mind that follows right behind to know what's happening. For example, if you're you're trying to watch your breath, sitting quietly, trying to watch your breath. Whether or not you are aware of your breath, you are breathing anyway, right? And sometimes when you're watching your breath, you tend to get lost in thoughts about the past or the future or imagining, and you completely forget about the breath. But you're still breathing anyway. The sensation of touch is still there. It's just whether your mind is right behind it or not. Okay? So it's the same with hearing. Hearing is one thing because you hear with your ears, and being aware of the hearing is another thing because that's the mind being aware of the hearing. Now, this seems to be like, splitting hairs. But when it comes to meditation, you can see this very clearly. Perceiving through the senses is one thing, and then being aware of those perceptions, the sense perceptions, is another thing. So being mindful means being aware of what's happening at the five senses, following right behind it, and not getting lost in thoughts about past, present, future. Another characteristic of the mind is that it is object dependent. Normal consciousness, the mind, can only occur when there is an object. Either it's thinking of something or it's aware of one of the sense objects. Okay, so now we learn a few principles. Let's recap. The five senses can only take specific objects for each sense, and their objects must be in the present moment. The mind is special. It can take objects of the past, the present, the future, and imagination and fantasies as well. Secondly, the mind is object dependent. It can occur only when there is an object, whether it is the contents of the thought or any of these five sense perceptions. Earlier on, I said that it's very difficult to be able to see the impermanent nature of materiality because we need a high degree of concentration, right? And I said also that it's relatively easier to watch the mind because the mind works so fast. And you can see how the mind, your thoughts come and go very quickly. How can we step back and look at our thoughts coming and going without getting caught up in them? Because we have got this bad habit of drowning in our thoughts. So we just apply this very simple principle. Because the mind is object dependent. If you don't want it to drown in subject matter which you don't like, which is causing you misery and which you are unable to solve for that moment, then you should change the subject. It's actually very simple. And I've tried this with many students, and many of them have come back to tell me how much they appreciate this simple principle. For example, if you cannot sleep at night, you're having insomnia. What is the reason why you're having insomnia? Well, one of the main reasons is because your mind is too active. You are concerned about some problem, some issues, and the mind keeps on thinking of those issues. And although you are really dead tired and you want to sleep, you don't know how to stop the mind thinking. Isn't that true? And what is the usual result of people? Go and get a sedative, get a tranquilizer. What is more effective and is free of charge? Don't have to pay a single cent and no side effects. Is that, this simple principle, you just change the object. What objects? You go to the five senses. You're lying down in your bed, be aware of the body sense. The head in contact with the pillow, your body in contact with your bed, your skin in contact with your clothing. You can even hear the tick-tock of the clock or hear the aircon sound in your room. You can be aware of these things, just like what we did just now before we started the talk. Relax. Bring your attention back to your senses. If there are any thoughts that come, don't try to push them away. Just see them, allow them to be, let them go, and come back to the senses, particularly your body sense. And you'll be surprised how easy it is. Because it's so boring, to just watch your body sensations. You'll fall asleep in no time. If you're relaxed, if you do this relaxation exercise and then you're too relaxed, you also fall asleep. So you must know how to balance your energy. Your body has to be relaxed, your mind has to be relaxed, but not so relaxed that you fall asleep. Relax enough to let things happen. Yeah. Okay, so if you understand this simple principle, then it's very easy. You can apply this principle not only when you're trying to sleep, but throughout the whole day. People complain, no time, where have I got time to allocate half an hour or 1 hour to sit quietly, and watch my breath. Even if I have time, when I get back home, the kids will be climbing all over me, the TV is on, people are chatting all over. How am I going to meditate? Okay, excuse accepted. But you've got many other occasions in your life when you have the chance to be aware, be in the present moment. Let me ask you, how many hours do you take from the moment you get up in the morning until you get to the office? 2 hours? Or more? Okay, in those 2 hours, let's go to more details. You get up, you hear the alarm ringing, okay, you get up. Okay, what's your mind? What's your mind now? Is it sleepy? Is it wakeful? What's it thinking of? Alright, and then you get up, either you make your bed or you don't, and either you change or you go to the toilet. All this time, you can be mindful, can't you? You can be with your senses, can't you? You're not involved in any productive thinking, right? Be aware of what's happening to your senses. Feel the air around you, listen to the sounds around you. not so much traffic because it's early in the morning. Maybe if there are trees around your apartment or where you're staying, you could hear the birds chirping away. And feel the atmosphere in your room. Feel the touch of your clothing with your skin. Be aware of your movements as you go to the toilet, opening the door, feeling the touch of the doorknob as you open it, feeling your hands, the flexing of your muscles, reaching out to get your toothpaste, and then the first splash of water on your face, how does it feel like? All these can be made the objects of awareness, can't you? Isn't that time? No kids climbing all over you. No one is turning on the TV at that time of the day. But you can still be there. You can still be in the present moment. Now, while you're doing that, of course, your mind is not so obedient to listen to you. You might be aware of these things just for a few moments, and then the mind is off, to planning for the future, worrying about things again. Right? Now, when you do that often enough, when it becomes a habit to you to come back to the present moment, then you have established what I call reference point. A reference point, an anchor for your mind. If you study geometry, you will know that in order to locate a point in space, right, you have 3 axes, x, y, z. Yeah? You have to give 3 coordinates to locate a point in space. Right or not? It's the same thing. Your mind is just like space, it's not something tangible. So you've got 5 coordinates for the mind. 5 senses. Your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, and your body. If you are not with any of the 5 senses, the mind is somewhere else. Where do you think it is? With practice, then you'll be able to distinguish 2 modes. You have productive mode and you've got idle mode. Yeah, productive mode is when you think about tasks or jobs related to your occupation, related to your family, certain things that you need to do. I'm not saying that you cut off all thinking, and be present all the time. No, you are able to distinguish between productive and idle mode. And when you are on productive mode, go ahead and think. But when you find that it's an idle thought, a thought, just a comment that arises in you because you see somebody, you hear something, and then, all of us are very busybodies. Whenever we see, hear, smell, taste anything, there'll be comments in our minds. Right or not? Uncalled for comments. And sometimes you can even chide yourself for it. How can I be so judgmental? That's a problem, you see. Because you think that those thoughts belong to you, then you scold yourself. Yeah? But those thoughts don't belong to you. They are products of causes and conditions. Conditioning, past conditioning, and present circumstances. Maybe I can give you specific examples, to make it clearer. If you are walking along the street, and then you happen to look up, and then you notice somebody somebody by the roadside, a woman, and you look at her and say, "Wow, she looks so ugly." Look at the cheekbone so high, the nose is so stubby, the lips are so so thick, no makeup, and this, you don't know where she comes from. This is just a frivolous thought, isn't it? it does come, whenever we see, hear, smell, taste, comments like that will just pop up, right or not? And there are millions of them, and each of them is like a pot of gold. You can make use of such frivolous comments that arise in your mind to look at the 3 characteristics of existence. They are not me, they are not mine, anatta. They come and go, right? And it's suffering because you cannot control it. They just come, even if you don't want them. And then even this self-chiding, scolding yourself for being judgmental, that itself also is another frivolous thought, right? That also doesn't belong to you. It comes about because of ignorance, thinking that the previous thought belongs to you, and that you should not be such a person to have such thoughts. These are all, delusions that are going on in our minds. Okay, so now, with practice, you'll be able to distinguish between productive mode and idle mode. Idle mode are all these comments and commentaries that are going up in your head, which are of no use. Then make use of them immediately. It's an idle thought, a frivolous thought, then let it go. Come back to the present moment. Don't pursue them. If it's a productive thought, go ahead and think. It's something you have to do, go ahead and think. But many times, we have a lot of frivolous thoughts going on in our minds. And it's not only the time that you get up from bed and prepare to go to your office. When you're driving in the car, right, getting from your work, from your home to your workplace, or you're traveling in the LRT, is it? No, in the or in any bus. Okay, what's happening? The next time when you're sitting on the bus, look around and see people's faces. Are they in the present or are they lost in thought? You will see, the people are lost in thought, thinking about something. They look very worried, but they're just standing there, carrying their worries with them. Now, who is making you worried? Yeah, your mind. Right or not? Although we have got so much technological progress in this world, your health services are so good, and your standard of living is so high, but more and more people are suffering from stress and depression, and various sorts of psychological disorders. And where do all these come from? It comes from the mind, So it's high time that we better start to understand how our mind works. And the only way that you can understand how the mind works is to look inwards, to look at your own mind. Maybe I shouldn't say now everyone can meditate. Maybe I should say now everyone must meditate. No choice, if you want to have psychological happiness and well-being, you have to understand how your mind works. Instead of having to pay, an exorbitant price to the psychotherapist or the psychologist, why not be your own psychotherapist? Look at your own mind, see how it works. Another thing that we need to keep in mind is that we have to distinguish between conventional values and ultimate reality. Yeah, you're still living in the conventional world. Yeah, so you still are bound by conventional laws, conventional obligations, and rules. So you must also have the wisdom to distinguish between one and the other. Like I said, when you are on idle mode, when you find that your mind is on idle mode, you can make use of those idle chatter and commentaries as grist for the mill, as organic fertilizer for your tree of wisdom. Look at them in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are impermanent. They just pop up. And they are suffering because you can't control them. And thirdly, there's no one there who is in control. There's no permanent, unchanging. It doesn't belong to me because it comes out of causes and conditions. Now, the first thing that a person who embarks on this journey of introspection realizes is that the mind is crazy. It's like a monkey. Before he started walking this path, he may have thought that he was a sane and normal person. But once you start to look at your mind, then you realize, I didn't know I was that crazy. I wasn't crazy before I started meditation. Now that I started meditation, I begin to see how crazy the mind is. Yeah, that's one of the first insights. You begin to see, really experience, not reading books or listening to Dhamma talks. You really experience the transient nature of your mind, the fickleness of your mind, the monkey mind. You begin to experience it. Then if you continue your practice diligently, as continually as possible, in as many aspects of your life as you can, then you will see that thoughts and emotions, they influence your behavior. But these thoughts and emotions don't just pop out of the blue. There are certain causes and conditions behind them. With repeated practice, persevering practice, then you begin to spot, immediate causes. For example, if you had not smelt that nice aroma, the thought of the memorable dinner that you had with a close friend wouldn't have occurred, would it? It triggered off. For the beginner meditator, it becomes very clear to them that some sensory perceptions trigger off thoughts. Then they may see that their thoughts also trigger off other thoughts. You can see this whole chain of thoughts coming about because of causes and conditions. Now, with right understanding, you begin to see, oh, this is not me and this is not mine. These all come about because of causes and conditions. And then you begin to undo. Sometimes you begin to see there are more than just an immediate cause. And there are many layers of conditioning. The immediate cause may be just one of the causes, but there are many other layers of past conditioning which may not be apparent to you at the beginning, but with repeated observation of your behavior, then you can see. And you might get to the root layer that is so deeply embedded in your subconscious. When you get to the root, then you are able to undo those past conditionings, and you no longer become a slave of your past habits. Then you can change into a better person. Your behavior can be changed. If you don't see the causes and conditions, you cannot change. You don't understand, and you just become a habit, a slave of habit. This principle of being able to undo certain neuroses, certain idiosyncrasies, when one understands its root conditioning, can also be found in past life therapy. I'm sure some of you have heard of past life therapy. This is something quite new, but it's becoming very popular and widely accepted. Usually someone suffers from a particular problem, some particular issue. It could be psychological, it could be a relationship issue, it could be a health issue, it could be some neurotic issue. And he or she is unable to solve that issue through normal, conventional ways, either mainstream medicine or mainstream psychotherapy. Then eventually they go to see this past life regression therapist. And they will try to get the client to relax, and will guide the client to memories of early childhood and then beyond that. And they will say, okay, you go to the root of your problem in maybe another life. So some of these patients are able to assess their past life. They can go through a very traumatic experience that they had in the past life. And then the therapist will be able to guide that client to understand that the causes and conditions for having this sort of behavior is no longer necessary. They were relevant at that time, but now circumstances have changed and it's no longer necessary to cling to them. And the therapist would ask the client to let go, to forgive. In many cases, some of these clients have recovered completely because they understood, they experienced and understood the root causes and conditions for their dysfunctional behavior. So this works in the same way. Nowadays also we have many types of psychotherapies. One of them is called cognitive behaviour therapy, which also works on the assumption, on the belief that behaviour is a result of the way we think and the way we feel. And the way we think and the way we feel are also products of past conditioning. So they try to change the way we think and the way we feel in order to make adjustments to dysfunctional behavior, to make the behavior more normal and more functional. But as I said, you don't have to go and see a psychotherapist. If you are able to keep on watching your mind using this very simple principle of coming back to the present moment throughout the day, whenever you can. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whenever you can remember, and whenever it's possible, come back to the present moment. Be aware of what you're doing. And then that itself will anchor your mind, and you can keep track of what's happening to your mind, how your mind is feeling, where it's going, what sort of thoughts is going on. So that's meditation, that's the way of understanding the true nature of your mind, being able to distinguish what are wholesome thoughts and what are unwholesome thoughts, and to develop wholesome thoughts and to abandon unwholesome thoughts. Is that so difficult? No? Principle is very easy. The only difficult thing is you keep on forgetting. That's why the Buddha, before he passed away, his last words were Appamadena sampadeta. Appamadena means without forgetfulness. Sampadeta means fulfill, be fulfilled. Fulfill your training without forgetfulness, with heedfulness, in other words. So we have to be reminded, again and again. That's why in Taiping, where I come from, we stay up in the forest monastery, and then we come down to collect our alms at the foothill. And then people will come and make offerings. After we have collected our food, then we will sit down, and before we chant our blessings, we would remind the people and give them guided instructions on how to be in the present moment and to watch their mind while we are chanting. So it's a daily reminder, it's a daily reminder. And many people have really expressed, their gratitude and appreciation of what we are doing. We are saying the same things, but, different ways. Just like the Buddha said the same things for 45 years. From different angles. But it's a reminder. You need to be reminded again and again, because our minds have been conditioned to think of things in terms of nitya, sukha, and atta. In terms of permanence, in terms of happiness, of satisfactoriness, in terms of me, I, mine. Yeah? So you have to, in order to change that, you have to be reminded again and again. And you can't just do that once a year for 1 month, Even if you have fantastic insights, in a 3-month retreat, when you come back to the world, and if you don't apply them, you're back to square one. Right? And then people will say, what's the point of you going to meditate? You come back and you're worse than before. And you give a bad name for Buddhism and meditation. Another misconception among people is that they think, like I said earlier, meditation will give you tranquility, will give you bright lights, and that's how you measure progress. Yeah, and when they go to a meditation retreat, they come back and say, my meditation this time no good lah, no lights, I don't see anything. People are all saying they are peaceful and calm. My mind is like a monkey, it's just still jumping around. But that's not how you measure progress. The way you measure progress is to see whether wholesome states have increased and unwholesome states have decreased. What are wholesome states? Have you become more patient, more understanding, more considerate? Yeah? Are you able to have less desires? Easier to let go of your attachments, cling less? Because the more you expect, the more you desire, the more you wish for, the more suffering you are inviting. Yeah? If you don't get what you wish for, what's going to happen? Disappointment. Yeah. So when you constantly remind yourself whenever you see your mind on idle mode, and you remind yourself, okay, that is anatta, that's anicca, that's dukkha, it just comes and goes. It's not me, it's not mine. This will be embedded in your subconscious, so that whenever something happens, untoward happens to you, automatically you would just respond by saying, well, it's anicca anyway, not me, not mine. Yeah, and you can let go. Otherwise, if you always think that it's permanent, it's me, it's mine, you keep on clinging and clinging and clinging, and you increase your suffering. Right? So, okay, to recap, now everyone must meditate in order to understand the true nature of your mind. And it's not really that difficult. It's just reminding yourself to be in the present moment, coming back to your senses. Maybe I should market the t-shirt that we have in SBS. At the back of the t-shirt it says, lost in thought, come back to your senses. So every member of the family should wear that so the other one can see. The one who is wearing it cannot see. Okay, let me stop here. Any questions or comments?
When you're meditating, right, then you would tell your mind that, okay, you need to be in your present moment. So what is the thing that's actually talking to the mind? My friend asked me this question before, and then I was wondering to myself,
who is it that is telling you to be mindful? Yeah. Now, earlier on I said that if you try to cultivate this habit of coming back to your senses as often as possible, you'll realize that the mind just runs off. Sometimes because of sensory triggers. You see something and then a thought arises. You hear something and then a thought arises, right? You feel something and then it reminds you of something. So you begin to see that there's no self there. There's no one who controls those thoughts, right? They just arose. They just arose because of specific conditions. Initially, as I said, you can see only the immediate cause, but there are actually many layers of causes behind it. What you saw triggered off a thought, but why that particular thought? Why not any other thought? Because there are other layers of conditionings which you do not perceive in the beginning. But you can see the immediate cause. If you had not seen that object, then that particular thought would not have arisen, right or not? Okay, based on that, you can say that there's not self, it's not me. I didn't purposely ask that thought to arise. It arose because the eye happened to look at an object, and then that triggered off that thought. Right? So, if you have many moments of this occurring in your life, this reinforces this perception of not self. Right? And then this will pervade through your worldview. Then you ask, then who is this person who is reflecting that there's no self? And what is this consciousness or this thought? That is also another thought. That thought has been conditioned into existence because you came here tonight, for example, and listened to me. Okay? So while I'm talking to you, I'm programming you, I'm conditioning you to behave in a certain way. So everything is related to everything. Everything conditions everything else. So our thoughts, as I said, are the products of past conditioning and present circumstances. So you can tell, your friend, there's no I there, there's no ego there, it's just thoughts. And thoughts are just products of conditioning.
Bhante, can you comment on these 4 foundations of mindfulness with regards to mindfulness meditation to bring to the present?
When you talk about being aware of how the mind relates to the six senses, which I'm actually advocating. This can be found in the fourth establishment of mindfulness, in Dhamma no-frills. We call it the contemplation of Dhamma or repeated observation of Dhamma. Now, what does Dhamma mean? Dhamma has got three connotations in this particular case. One is, it's equivalent to the English word thing, as general as the English word thing. You know, thing could mean anything, right? So Dhamma means anything. Secondly, Dhamma also means principles of nature, principles of conditioning, dependent arising. Then, thirdly, Dhamma also means the Buddha's teachings. Now, what are the Buddha's teachings? The Buddha's teachings are based on his discovery of the law of nature, the principles of nature. Right? So, when we contemplate the Dhamma, or we observe the Dhamma, we are actually looking at things, phenomena, and how they are related to one another through the principles of nature, according to the Buddha's teachings. Yeah, the Buddha has categorized, phenomena into various classes. You talk about the six senses, and the six sense consciousness, the six sense objects. Then he talks about the five aggregates. He talks about the five hindrances, and so forth. All these different ways of classifying natural phenomena is based on the Buddha's teaching. Scientists have a different way of classifying natural phenomena. Yeah, but we are not using the method of the scientists. We are using the Buddha's method. So Dhammanupassana means observing things and how they are related to one another according to the Buddha's teaching. Right. Under that Dhammanupassana, there's one section that's called the six senses, six sense bases. There the Buddha says, here a monk understands or comprehends the eye, and he comprehends the eye object, which is a visual object. And he comprehends also the fetter or the defilement that arises on account of these two. Now, what does this mean? Which means that when your eye comes into contact with an object, if lust arises or anger arises, then you understand. Right? This anger arose because I came into contact with an object. Right or not? So you begin to see phenomena. You begin to see how this phenomena is related. This anger did not come out of the blue. It came out because of causes and condition. What is the cause and condition? Because the eye saw something and you recognize it. And then this triggered off a memory of someone who swindled you a few 100,000 many years ago, and you still haven't forgiven him, although he's long dead. And that causes anger to arise in you. Okay? Right. So you begin to see that there's no one there, and it's just this thought that is clinging on to an idea that you have not let go of. Alright, that's one. Then he goes on to each of the senses, Then he says, he knows not only this fetter that arises, he knows how this fetter arises on account of these two, and he knows also when this fetter or this defilement has arisen, how you can abandon it. You don't get caught up in the anger. Let it go. Suddenly you realize that and you say, oh, angry already. Don't have to think about it. That guy is dead. Stop. Come back to your senses. Okay, that is how you abandon it when it has arisen. Then he also knows how once it has been abandoned, next time it won't come out again. So how do you do that? You do that only when you can completely let go. Let go of the idea that that guy shouldn't have cheated me. If you're still hanging on to that idea, he shouldn't have cheated me, he shouldn't have cheated me, whenever you think of it, you're going to get angry, isn't it? That's the cause of anger, because you have not let go of clinging to the idea. But once you have let go of clinging to the idea, it's done, it's finished, cannot be undone anymore. Anyway, he's dead, I forgive him, he's probably a karmic debt I have to pay him, forget it. Right? So once you let go, next time the anger won't arise again, even if you see somebody that looks like him. Okay? Alright, so that applies to all the 5 senses. And then very interestingly, now it comes to the mind. He says, he knows the mind, he knows Dhamma. Okay, what is Dhamma? We relate the eye to visual object. We relate the ear to sound. We relate the nose to smells. We relate the tongue to taste, and the body to bodily sensations. All right. What do you relate the mind with? Mental objects, objects of the mind. Yeah? In Pali, it's called Dhamma. Dhamma means anything, you know. Okay, so anything means it could be thoughts, yeah. It could be concepts. It could be ultimate reality. You know, it could actually be what it could be anything that the mind can be aware of. Yeah, it could be it could be seeing, it could be the process of seeing, it could be the object that is seen. Yeah, it could be the thoughts about the object. It could be the emotions that arise because of that. It could be your behaviour that resulted out of, you know, your reaction towards that object. So, whatever is the object of the mind, you understand. The yogi understands it. He understands the mind. He understands how the mind reacts to whatever is happening at the 6 senses. How he reacts to the 5 sense objects, as well as how he reacts to his own thoughts as well. You know, sometimes, you know, certain thoughts arise in you, and you do not want those thoughts. You try to push it away, push them away. And that is a reaction. Or sometimes a nice thought, a nice idea arises, a very intriguing idea, and then you latch on to it, and you indulge in it. You want to proliferate that idea. Yeah, you see, that is also another reaction. So in that Dhammanupassana, the Buddha says you understand the mind, you understand the Dhamma, the object of the mind, and you understand the defilement that arises on account of the 2. When your mind thinks of an object, yeah, what is the defilement that arises? You like it, you dislike it, you're trying to push it away, you want to indulge in it, you want to proliferate, you want to think more about it. You see, you understand how the mind reacts. Then you understand, you know, when these reactions arise in you, how you can handle them, how you can abandon them. Yeah, as I said, the easiest way is to be aware that it has happened and then come back to the present moment. Be aware of the senses. Then you cut it off, and it is truncated. Unless it's a very strong thought, you know, it may go back again. But every time you bring it back to the present moment. And like the example I gave just now, you know, if you see the root cause of it, why you're feeling angry, and you know that it's because of clinging to a particular expectation, then you let go of that clinging to the expectation. That will be, you know, the cause and condition for the non-arising of that emotion in the future. So this is found in the Dhammanupassana of the satipatthana. Does that answer your question?
Now I understand better. Otherwise it's very confusing.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.